Intestine Baalism. It's probably the only extreme metal band I've talked about here on my channel that I've yet to say a negative thing about. These guys are based out of Tokyo, Japan, and play in the style of melodic death metal. However, back in 1991, originally their band name was Euthanasia, and they played in the style of that being thrash metal. But towards the end of 1994, they changed their name to Intestine Baalism as we know them today, and they played within the style of that being death metal. From what I searched up online, there are practically no interviews of Intestine Baalism other than the one that they did for Metal Inside back in 2003. And while they have done interviews before that, mainly for zines, I don't own any of those zines, so I can't use them as references for this video as to what they said. But anyway, getting back on track here, within this interview that they did for Metal Inside, they briefly talk about as to why there's such a radical change up within the styles that they played around with during the 90s, considering the fact that as they progressed on as a fully formed band, it kind of came natural for them to play death metal. However, I do feel like the influences within the metal scene itself plays a huge factor here. During the early 90s, thrash metal was losing quite a bit of appeal within the underground metal scene, yet death metal was gaining a lot of attention. And I feel like Intestine Baalism being aware of this definitely rubbed off on them in some degree, because when you listen to their 1995 demo, it sounds awfully familiar to something you would hear from Dismember. Later on in the year of 1995, they would also do a four-way split called Bizarre Abnormality with Catasexual Urge Motivation, Desperate Corruption, and Saphrogenic Entrails. While the material that Intestine Baalism includes you can find within their 1995 demo, what really stands out to me about this particular release is just how out of place they are. Again, they're playing within the style of death metal very similar to that of Dismember, yet they're doing a split with Catasexual Urge Motivation and Saphrogenic Entrails. I mean, those two bands play in the style of gore grind and brutal death metal. I bring this up because when you get to their debut full-length album, which I've noticed is like the fan favorite, that being An Anatomy of the Beast, from all the reviews that I've read online, people always say that this seems to be the heaviest and most brutal sounding melodic death metal album that they've ever heard. Which goes back to what I said earlier, that they take influence from everything that they can, or at least they pay attention to. And I think it's a huge reason as to why they're just so highly respected and praised to the highest degree within the death metal fan base. Because they seem to take melodic death metal and expand upon it a hell of a lot more than just sounding like another inspired Gothenburg sounding melodic death metal band. Another example of influence that a lot of people point out, and this was even brought up on the video done by Radio Free Innsmouth, is that the way that they structure and layer their melodies with their songwriting, it's often compared to that of the soundtrack to Castlevania. Which makes, sense for the most part when you consider the fact that Intestine Baalism is from Japan. Castlevania was developed in Japan and started gaining a bit of steam within the gaming community around the same time period when Intestine Baalism was releasing An Anatomy of the Beast. And of course, there's the vocals. While you do have the low gutturals that you would come to expect within death metal, a lot of people point out the high, wretched screams that you'll hear within this album resembles a lot of the characteristics you would hear within black metal. How I look at it with this album as to why it's just so beloved by the people who do know of it is that, again, it's very expansive. They know how to contrast different styles and textures together and just make it so much more than just another melodic death metal album. With the success that they got with An Anatomy of the Beast, it wouldn't be until 6 years later in 2003 where they would release their sophomore full-length album, Banquet in the Darkness. A huge reason as to why there's such a big time gap in between these two albums is that there were a lot of setbacks and constraints for the band during this time, considering the fact that band members were coming and going, and there wasn't really any consistency on that aspect. But one particular member that I feel like deserves a lot of credit for this album even happening is the one member that stuck with the band from the beginning, that being Seiji Kakuzaki. Not only is he the vocalist, guitarist, and songwriter for the band, but he also mixes and masters everything within the discography. And with this album, he mixed and mastered it between the years of 1998 to 2001, which is quite a long time period for just doing that. And it's a huge reason as to why it sounds a bit varied with the overall quality and sound with the mixing and mastering between the songs within this album. As for my opinion with this, I know I'm going to come off very biased here within this video, but I think it's another stellar addition within their catalog that's definitely worthy of checking out. As for the overall differences and characteristics between the two, I've always viewed it that an Anatomy of the Beast is Intestine Balsam at their heaviest, where Banquet in the Darkness is Intestine Balsam at their darkest. 5 years later, towards the end of 2008, we would get their third and still to this day latest full-length album, that being Ultimate Instinct. This album was my introduction to the band, and I try my best to keep my biased fanboyism off to the side, but I just can't help it here. To this day, I still view it as one of the greatest death metal albums I've ever heard. Hell, it's one of the best albums I've heard within music itself. Every little aspect about it is incredible. The speed, the power, the songwriting, the atmosphere is just so captivating from start to finish that I couldn't even think of anything negative to say about it, even if my life depended on it. How I view it basically is that every single song on this album is flawless, but personal favorites would be Dark Surface, Galaxy of the Black Sun, the title track. Then there's the song Wind of Death, which honestly at this point I might as well just say is my overall favorite Intestine Balsam track, because there's so many characteristics about it that just make it so incredible. It's like you have the dissonant, raw atmosphere of something like, from atmospheric black metal, meets like the relentless brutality of something you would hear from like the Craig Pillard era of Incantation, yet it still maintains the melodicism that makes Intestine Balsam so unique. Just overall, this particular song, Wind of Death, slays so fucking hard. And just for a quick recap of how I view with the characteristics with the 3 full-length albums by Intestine Balsam, is that An Anatomy of the Beast is them at their heaviest, Banquet in the Darkness is them at their darkest, and Ultimate Instinct, which is my personal favorite, I would say is them at their most atmospheric. Ever since then, they haven't released any new material, and it's been almost 15 years since the release of Ultimate Instinct. And while they still are active with playing shows, the one thing that they have been able to accomplish that's really significant for them recently is that ever since they started out, they've only played shows within their home country, that being Japan. Yet recently, back in 2019, they played a show at the Netherlands Death Fest, which would mean for the first time ever, they actually performed outside of their home country. And hopefully one day they'll be able to perform again outside of Japan. Fingers crossed that it's a US tour. And I guess I have a bit of optimism towards that actually happening, because even though they haven't released anything new in the past 15 years, I've noticed recently that they've gained a bit more of a fan base. Labels now are repressing a lot of their older material over the past handful of years. For example, Extreme Music just recently repressed this last year on a 10-inch vinyl, which is really cool, this being their debut demo. Then An Anatomy of the Beast got repressed both on CD and cassette through Sewer Raw Records, I believe. And just recently as well, their sophomore full-length album, Banquet in the Darkness, got repressed for the first time ever on LP through Nameless Grave Records, which, by the way, I'm just flabbergasted that this is still available to get on the Nameless Grave Records web store. So I'll have a link provided in the description to where you can pick this up, because y'all should not be sleeping on this while they're still readily available. And that'll do it for this video, guys. Like always, links provided to everything I talked about will be in the description below. And yeah, like always, guys, make sure you guys drink plenty of water to stay hydrated, and have a great day.